Darmstadt, Germany, March 2026. Inside a research facility that looks ordinary from the outside, a moment unfolds that nobody outside these walls could possibly imagine. A scientist sits at her workstation, fingers hovering over a keyboard, eyes scanning a screen filled with data she has waited 4 long months to receive. The transfer is finally complete. 5 instruments, 1 target, 12 images, terabytes of spectral readings captured by the most sophisticated deep space probe ever built. The kind of data that could redefine our understanding of the solar system or something far stranger. She opens the first file. She reads it once, then again. And then, something unexpected happens. Not an email, not a memo, not a careful bureaucratic note. She picks up the phone at 6 in the morning and calls her department director directly. "We need to schedule a meeting before anyone publishes anything," she says. That meeting is now scheduled for late March, weeks away. As of March 9th, 2026, the data remains locked in that facility, unpublished, unannounced, unseen by the world. 7 billion people have no idea what these instruments have recorded. And across 17 countries, spanning dozens of institutions and hundreds of researchers, not a single scientist has spoken a word. No preprint, no forum post, no whisper to a journalist, just silence. In the 60-year history of deep space exploration, there has never been a discovery wrapped in this kind of silence. Late March is approaching. Papers are being drafted, statements meticulously crafted. But before the polished announcements reach the public, it is possible to examine what has been deliberately withheld. What are they not telling us? What patterns remain unexplained? And why might a closed-door meeting in late March 2026 be the most consequential scientific event on Earth at this very moment? To understand why the November 6th, 2025 observation session is so extraordinary, and why the data sits untouched as of early March 2026, we must first understand JUICE, the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer. Launched by the European Space Agency in April 2023, JUICE is a flagship mission with a singular purpose: the detailed study of Jupiter's 3 largest ocean-bearing moons, Ganymede, Callisto, and Europa. These moons aren't just interesting, they are some of the most promising candidates for extraterrestrial subsurface oceans in the solar system. Ganymede, the largest moon in the solar system, is even bigger than Mercury and holds a confirmed saltwater ocean beneath roughly 150 kilometers of ice. That's more liquid water than all the oceans on Earth combined. JUICE carries 11 instruments, each painstakingly designed and calibrated by teams across 17 countries. Every device is a precision tool, built to answer very specific scientific questions. The major spectrometer was calibrated against icy moon compositions. The SWI submillimeter instrument was tuned to detect specific molecular species in Jupiter's atmosphere. The PEP particle environment package was designed to map charged particles in Jupiter's radiation belts, the most extreme planetary magnetic environment outside the Sun. These are not general-purpose cameras or sensors. Redirecting them to observe something unplanned is not trivial. It requires consensus, approval, coordination, and a scientific justification strong enough to override the primary mission schedule. And yet, on November 6, 2025, exactly 7 days after the interstellar object known as 3I, Atlas made its closest approach to the Sun on October 29, JUICE did exactly that. 5 instruments, simultaneously, all redirected toward this interstellar visitor. 12 images captured by the Janus wide-angle camera, alongside spectral, molecular, particle environment, and ultraviolet data from the other 4 instruments. At the time, JUICE was 66 million miles from 3I, Atlas, on the far side of the Sun, a difficult communication window, with data transmission slowed to a crawl, occurring precisely when the world's attention had largely moved on. No public explanation exists for this 5-instrument retargeting. Not in March 2026. Not in the months before. That omission is itself a story. The question becomes, what were these scientists looking for? And what had preliminary data already suggested to them? MAGIS, the Moon's and Jupiter Imaging Spectrometer, operates across visible and near-infrared wavelengths. It can distinguish water ice, carbon dioxide ice, methane clathrates, ammonia hydrates, and complex organics with absolute precision. When pointed at 3I, Atlas, Weeks after the object had already displayed electromagnetic countermeasures against spectroscopic analysis, the team wasn't asking casual questions. They were conducting a forensic chemical investigation. What is this object actually made of? SWI, the submillimeter wave instrument, identifies molecular species with extreme specificity: water vapor, carbon monoxide, methanol, hydrogen cyanide, prebiotic organics, not for expected comet chemistry, but for anomalies that defy standard models. PEP measures charged particles, electrons, protons, heavier ions, mapping how the object interacts with its surrounding electromagnetic environment at a level no other instrument can match. This is only run when preliminary data suggests the target is not a passive, inert body. As of March 8, 2026, certain facts are public. The observation session, instrument list, 12 images, 66 million mile distance, 4-month data delay, these are documented. But what MAGIS, SWI, and PEP actually recorded? That remains secret, known only to the instrument teams. The data arrived in late February 2026, and for 2 weeks, complete silence has reigned. No preprints, no informal posts, no comments to journalists. A closed internal meeting is set for late March. The anomaly is not only in the data itself, but in the unusual institutional behavior surrounding it. When LIGO detected gravitational waves, or the Event Horizon Telescope imaged a black hole, announcements were immediate, public, global. Ordinary findings leak, even exciting ones with normal explanations. The silence here is deliberate, and this silence is itself a data point. The anomalies that triggered this unprecedented 5-instrument observation began with 3I, Atlas's perihelion, on October 29, 2025. NASA's Spherix telescope recorded a flare in brightness as the object moved away from the Sun, violating the thermodynamic laws governing cometary behavior. Every known comet brightens as it approaches the Sun and dims as it recedes. Not 3I, Atlas. Its post-perihelion flare suggests something else entirely, an active, energy-producing system operating on a schedule rather than natural forces. Cryovolcanism, X-ray halos, electromagnetic countermeasures, trajectory corrections aligned to Jupiter's magnetic axis, and directed beams aimed at Earth, all of these anomalies began to form a pattern. Individually, they might have natural explanations. Taken together, they describe something unprecedented. The universe had sent a signal, and the few dozen scientists holding the data were instructed to wait before they spoke. That wait is about to end. By the time November 6, 2025 arrived, 3I, Atlas had already defied multiple expectations. Its trajectory, outgassing behavior, and spectral characteristics had hinted at something unusual. But the 5-instrument observation conducted by JUICE wasn't casual curiosity, it was a targeted forensic investigation. Each instrument was chosen for its ability to detect phenomena that no ordinary comet would exhibit. And in doing so, they produced data that, as of March 2026, remains tightly held, unseen by the public, untouched by peer scrutiny, and silent in every official channel. The anomalies begin with the post-perihelion brightening recorded by Spherix. Comets brighten as they approach the Sun because solar flux drives sublimation. As the distance increases, activity should drop, but 3I, Atlas, did the opposite. As it receded from the Sun, its brightness and activity output increased. This wasn't a random fluctuation, it wasn't a minor anomaly. The timing and magnitude of the flare suggest a controlled or internally powered mechanism, a signal that something within the object was responding deliberately rather than passively following natural laws. Scientists have proposed the heterogeneous nucleus model as a potential explanation. A patch of highly volatile material beneath the surface might erupt after perihelion. It's theoretically plausible but requires extraordinary coincidences. The exact right material in the exact right place, activated at the exact right time. The odds of that sequence naturally occurring for the observed magnitude of activity stretch credulity. Yet, no conclusive natural explanation has been advanced. The anomaly remains unresolved. Then there are the cryovolcanic signatures. Observatories independently detected eruptions of water, ammonia, methane, and nitrogen from the interior of 3I, Atlas. Cryovolcanism is known in outer solar system bodies. Enceladus vents water vapor through its south polar fractures. Europa shows evidence of subsurface upwelling, but for a comet passing the inner solar system, sustained cryovolcanic activity is unprecedented. These were not minor blips in the data. They represented continuous energy release from within, an internal engine producing measurable effects on a scale inconsistent with a simple rock and ice composition. The X-ray halo adds another layer of complexity. Instruments detected X-ray emissions extending roughly 250,000 kilometers from the nucleus in all directions, two-thirds the distance from Earth to the Moon. Solar wind charge exchange can produce X-rays around comets, but the intensity and scale of this halo exceeded expectations. Even among seasoned researchers, this observation raised questions that remain unresolved. Now, layer in the electromagnetic anomalies. Precision trajectory corrections aligned with Jupiter's magnetic axis. Directed beams at 1.42 GHz aimed at Earth. Stabilization jets configured at exactly 120 degrees. A 1,665 MHz countermeasure apparently designed to interfere with observational instruments. Each data point, standing alone, might be explained away as a rare but natural phenomenon. Together, they form a coherent operational profile, inconsistent with any known natural object. JUICE 5 instruments were redirected precisely to capture these signals. MAGI-S measured the near-infrared spectrum, looking for the chemical fingerprints of known interstellar bodies, but preliminary reports suggest anomalies. SWI scanned the submillimeter spectrum for molecular signatures, hunting for the unexpected, prebiotic, or unnatural. PEP tracked charged particles, seeking patterns that indicate electromagnetic activity beyond passive interactions. JANUS captured 12 wide-angle images, and an ultraviolet instrument added yet another layer of spectral information. All instruments were synchronized, coordinated, and executed with surgical precision. 4 months later, the data arrived. 2 weeks ago, as of March 8, 2026, the research teams finally had the complete dataset, and yet silence prevailed. No leaks, no commentary, no speculative preprints. A closed meeting is scheduled for late March. This is unusual behavior, especially for extraordinary observations. Historically, the space science community moves quickly. Gravitational waves, black hole imaging, lunar water detection, these events were publicly shared, sometimes globally announced, within weeks. But here, across 17 countries and dozens of institutions, every scientist involved has maintained perfect silence. And that silence is itself a signal. In the context of modern scientific communication, such behavior is anomalous. Scientists are not naturally silent when the data is routine or explainable. Ordinary findings leak, and even unexpected but comprehensible results provoke excitement and commentary. The discipline required to maintain complete silence across this multinational team suggests the data may not be routine, and the patterns observed in 3I Atlas may demand careful framing before public release. Consider the pattern of anomalies. A post-Perihelion flare defying thermodynamics, extensive cryovolcanic activity, an unprecedented X-ray halo, precise trajectory corrections, stabilization jets, electromagnetic countermeasures, and directed beams aimed at Earth. Each phenomenon has a potential natural explanation. Together, they create a narrative that describes a controlled, operational object rather than a passive celestial body. The sequence of events aligns more closely with an engineered system than a random rock hurtling through space. Even more compelling is the timing of the observations. The 5-instrument redirect occurred during a difficult communications window on the far side of the Sun, when the world's attention had shifted away from 3I Atlas. Was this deliberate? The alignment suggests forethought, an effort to observe the object while minimizing external scrutiny. Combined with the post-Perihelion flare and other anomalies, the picture emerging is unlike anything previously encountered in deep space studies. At this point, the question is no longer whether 3I Atlas is extraordinary. The question is, what is it? And why has the scientific community withheld commentary for weeks after receiving the data? The answer, whatever it may be, will not emerge casually. It will emerge through controlled analysis, likely discussed in that closed March meeting. And when it is revealed, the world may be facing one of the most consequential scientific disclosures in human history, one hinted at not by public announcements or press releases, but by the very silence surrounding the data. As we approach the full forensic review of the instrument's findings, the implications of each anomaly become even clearer. From chemical composition to electromagnetic behavior, from X-ray emissions to cryovolcanic activity, the pattern is consistent with an object whose complexity and operational behavior challenge traditional cometary models. 3I, Atlas, may represent a class of interstellar object. We have never encountered a system that operates on an internal schedule, one that may have been in place for millennia before entering our solar system. As we move deeper into the anomalies of 3I, Atlas, the emerging pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Each observation, each instrument reading, each seemingly independent phenomenon fits into a coherent operational profile. The post-Perihelion flare, the cryovolcanic activity, the X-ray halo, the electromagnetic countermeasures, the precise trajectory corrections, the stabilization jets, and the directed beams, all of these are signals, not random occurrences. Individually, they could be explained away. Collectively, they describe something entirely different, an object behaving as if it has an internal plan, an orchestrated sequence of events defying the natural expectations for comets or interstellar debris. The timing of these behaviors is as striking as their nature. Consider the post-perihelion flare detected by SPHEREX. Standard cometary physics dictates that a body loses energy as it recedes from the sunday. Outgassing should slow, brightness should diminish, and the coma should contract. Instead, 3I, Atlas increased its brightness and activity output precisely when external energy from the sun was waning. Such behavior, if natural, would require a highly improbable alignment of internal composition and geometry, volatile material located just beneath the surface, activated exactly as solar heating receded, producing a precisely timed increase in output. But 3I, Atlas, did more than flare. Its behavior followed a schedule, suggesting either an unknown natural mechanism or, more provocatively, an internally regulated process. Cryovolcanism adds yet another layer of intrigue. Multiple observatories recorded plumes of volatile material erupting from the object, not once, but consistently, suggesting sustained internal energy. On Enceladus, Saturn's moon, and Europa, Jupiter's moon, cryovolcanism is driven by tidal forces and internal heat. But here, 3I, Atlas exhibited these signatures during its inner solar system passage, a context in which external tidal or solar forces are insufficient to account for the magnitude and timing of the eruptions. The implication is that an active process is generating internal energy, independent of predictable solar influence. The X-ray halo complicates the picture even further. Extending approximately 250,000 kilometers from the nucleus in all directions, the halo dwarfs the scale of any previously observed cometary emission. While solar wind charge exchange can produce X-rays, the intensity and spatial extent of this halo suggest a process either amplified or controlled internally. Combined with electromagnetic countermeasures detected at 1,665 MHz, trajectory adjustments aligned to Jupiter's magnetic axis, and stabilization jets set at precise angles, the X-ray halo hints at deliberate, directed activity. Each phenomenon, when examined in isolation, might be considered a rare natural event. Together, they create a sequence that reads less like a random combination of forces and more like a deliberate operational protocol. Meanwhile, the coordinated 5-instrument observation by JUICE provides critical insight into the possible complexity of 3I. Atlas, MAG-IS, scanning visible and near-infrared spectra, was set to detect chemical compositions. SWI, probing submillimeter wavelengths, looked for molecular signatures, prebiotic or otherwise anomalous. PEP monitored charged particles in the surrounding environment. The JANIS wide-angle camera captured visual imaging, while ultraviolet instruments provided additional spectral context. Together, these instruments offered a multidimensional view, capable of confirming whether the anomalies observed by SPHEREX and other telescopes were natural or indicative of an unprecedented phenomenon. Yet, despite the arrival of this dataset in late February 2026, silence has reigned. No leaks, no preprints, no forum posts, no comments to journalists. This silence, enforced across 17 countries and dozens of institutions, is itself extraordinary. In modern scientific culture, discoveries, especially anomalies, to leak quickly. The fact that no member of the Jewish instrument teams has spoken publicly indicates both the significance of the data and the care with which the research community is approaching its interpretation. The sequence of anomalies cannot be dismissed as coincidence. The stabilization jets, electromagnetic countermeasures, X-ray halo, directed beams, post-perihelion flare, and unresolved cryovolcanic activity form a coherent operational pattern. Viewed through the lens of conventional cometary physics, they defy explanation. Viewed through the lens of engineered behavior, they form a profile consistent with an interstellar system executing a carefully designed sequence: survey, observation, response, departure. The sophistication implied is unprecedented, raising profound questions about the nature of this object and its origin. The institutional behavior surrounding the data only heightens the intrigue. Unlike typical extraordinary observations, where findings are released publicly, the Jewish team has scheduled a closed internal meeting for late March 2026. The data, already in hand for 2 weeks, has remained completely confidential. Historically, events such as the detection of gravitational waves, the first image of a black hole, and the confirmation of water ice on the moon were rapidly and publicly shared. That the Jewish team has not released any information, despite holding data of potentially world-altering significance, is itself an anomaly. It signals the extraordinary nature of what they have observed. Theoretical frameworks, like the Kaku lens, used here as a tool to hypothesize engineered interstellar systems, help interpret the anomalies in a structured way. Under this framework, the post-perihelion flare, the coordinated trajectory corrections, the electromagnetic countermeasures, and the structured X-ray halo resemble a system transitioning from survey mode into departure mode. The data implies preparation, not passive existence. Orchestration, not randomness. And while this remains a hypothesis, the sequence of events and anomalies challenges conventional natural explanations to an extraordinary degree. Adding to this, the observations suggest an intelligence, or at least an internal control system, governing behavior across multiple domains: thermal output, electromagnetic activity, particle emissions, trajectory, alignment, and energy release. Such coordinated behavior, occurring consistently and predictably, is incompatible with the behavior of ordinary interstellar objects. Every anomaly supports a cumulative picture. 3i. Atlas is not merely unusual, it operates according to patterns that may indicate planning, internal regulation, or engineering far beyond human precedent. As March 2026 progresses, the world waits unknowingly. Scientists sit with terabytes of unexplained data, preparing to meet behind closed doors, discussing what can be shared and how it should be framed. Meanwhile, the sequence of anomalies, the flare, the jets, the X-ray halo, the cryovolcanism, the electromagnetic countermeasures, the directed beams, and the precision observations forms a coherent story that will soon demand public attention. When that moment comes, it may mark a turning point not only in astronomy but in humanity's understanding of the cosmos. As the pieces of the 3i Atlas puzzle come together, the magnitude of what the Jewish team has been silently observing becomes impossible to ignore. Consider the full pattern: a post-perihelion flare that defies thermodynamics, consistent cryovolcanic activity indicating internal energy sources, an immense X-ray halo stretching hundreds of thousands of kilometers, electromagnetic countermeasures, trajectory corrections precisely aligned to Jupiter's magnetic axis, stabilization jets configured at exact angles, and directed radio beams aimed at Earth. Add to this the 5-instrument JUICE observation, capturing chemical, molecular, particle, and ultraviolet data, all coordinated with surgical precision. Individually, each phenomenon may have a natural explanation. Together, they form a pattern inconsistent with a passive, inert body. The silence surrounding these findings is deafening. 4 months after the observation session, 2 weeks after the data arrived, not a single member of the Jewish instrument teams has spoken publicly. No preprint, no commentary, not even an informal discussion among journalists covering space science. The level of coordination required to maintain this secrecy across 17 countries and dozens of institutions is unprecedented. In modern science, extraordinary findings are usually rapidly communicated, even in partial form. This silence suggests that what has been observed is not just extraordinary, it is paradigm shifting.